That is for Aston Villa to go to Vitality Stadium. Never an easy place to go, especially this season, and take away all 3 points. Welcome back inside our studio, Robbie Mustoe, Tim Howard, Rebecca Lowe. Well, Robbie, this form for Aston Villa, because of the league and the difference between the league and the cup, so because they went out of the Champions League and they went out of the FA Cup in 1 week, their league form of 7 wins in their last 8 has slightly gone under the radar, but they are finishing on fire.
They are, without playing on fire. But there's different ways to win football matches, and this is where people like us give credit to Unai Emery, and that's why he's a very good manager, because we have seen super high-line Aston Villa, high press, big energy, destroy teams that way. These recent games, back-to-back 1-0s, are different. They're sit back, defend, what have you got? He trusts his back line and midfield. Amadou Onana came into the side today for Tielemans. I thought it was brilliant. Very, very good from him in midfield. And they got a good defence. And they got a good goalkeeper. They make a save right at the end there. So whichever way to win games, it doesn't matter at this point in the season. But he's smart enough to know that they've maybe a little jaded from those cup competitions and will do this a slightly different way. And he's doing it very, very well.
And, Tim, they've got a good striker in Ollie Watkins, who now holds the new Premier League record at the club with 75 goals. Just talk a bit about Ollie Watkins.
Well, he's one of my favourite strikers. I mean, we got a chance to meet with him a couple summers ago, and he speaks really well. You know, he's confident but humble, and he gets the goals. And when you're a Premier League striker and you're getting, you know, near enough 20 goals a season, it's like gold. And something I want to touch on, because you said it about Unai Emery, like, I'm constantly talking about managers who are so strict and they won't change their ways. And you said he's a smart manager, but what he also has is trust. Because this is what I believe. When we look at teams, maybe it's Southampton who's going down or Tottenham who's having a terrible season, the manager won't change. And that, to me, shows a lack of trust in the players. Because if my manager, who I believe in, says, today we're playing a high line, we play a high line. If he says, you know what, lads, I think the game calls for us to drop off and we got to defend resolutely together, I'm going to do it because he's my manager. And so I don't quite understand why managers don't chop and change. And Unai Emery sees what his team needs and he does it, and it's just been a real testament to him.
Tim, the people with the brains much bigger and better than mine have done the maths, and that result has actually confirmed Aston Villa European football next season of some sort, whether it's Conference League, Europa League, Champions League. They will be in Europe, which, as we heard Unai Emery say before the game, Europe, Europe, Europe. He's done it.
I was going to say, you know why he says that? Because if you get the man into Europe, he does really well in European competitions. So, but I also agree with him. Champions League is the pinnacle of European football. But if you get in the Europa League, it also helps them build the club. It's still important to Aston Villa, and I appreciate what he said.
It's just, I'm sure it's just fun to go back in the Champions League. There's such a great time with it. So many big teams they beat at Villa Park, and the experience, they'd love to do it. And we got ourselves a great race, Rebecca. With that draw from Man City earlier on, not being able to beat Southampton, it is really, really tight with a couple of games to go, because games tomorrow that are going to be critical. But
who's the one team you would put your money on would make it outside of Liverpool and Arsenal if you were going to have to pick one? Would it still be City?
Yeah, it would be. But below that, I still think Newcastle United. I still think they've got it in them to finish strongly.
OK, we'll talk more. Yeah, we absolutely will. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Let's take you, though, back to Vitality Stadium. Peter Drury, Graham Lasso waiting with some final reflections. And if that's what he wanted before the game, Unai Emery, Peter, Europe, 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 he's got it.
He's got it, and I thought, Rebecca, and I know Graham concurs, that was an exercise in match smartness. They managed the whole thing so well, and that's what Emery can do so very well. And he's got 2 more games to manage, Graham, in the same sort of way. And it's a really interesting little run-in for Villa, because it's the 2 Europa League finalists. Spurs and Manchester United, each of whom have this remarkable narrative. They've got to play Spurs ahead of the Europa League final, and how Tottenham treat that game would be interesting. And then Manchester United off the back of either a glorious night or a shattering night in Europe on the final day. So through Villa eyes, how do those 2 fixtures look?
2 wins. I mean, Tim was talking about it around sort of comparing Unai Emery to some of the other coaches, and I think that pragmatic approach, game-by-game approach around his tactical awareness and the confidence he has in himself as a coach to maintain the trust of the players. When you chop and change, you can sometimes, players can look at you and think, well, do you really know what you're doing? You keep changing things, so you don't trust yourself. He trusts himself and he trusts the players to adapt, and they're clever enough players in the systems they play to be able to understand those nuances and perform a slightly different role. He did that in spades today. I think the Spurs game, to your point about the timing of Spurs Manchester United with Villa either side, I think he'll go into one of those games really aggressively. I think, you know, either the first or the second match, based on playing Spurs, you've got to make sure they're going to have one eye on the final. So if you get after them early on, they might fold. And afterwards, playing United, if they've won or lost, you've got a chance of coming out the blocks quickly against them and catching them out. Because the games now at this stage of the season are all about what's between your ears and how confident you feel in the running, in yourselves, in your fitness, and that push for the final line. And today was a great example of that. They worked really hard in a very defensive way to get the result, and they got it relatively comfortably.
Sure, and although of course, Rebecca, nothing is for certain, given the fixtures you've mentioned that others play each other, the chances are if Villa play 2-1-2 now, they'd be in.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lowe, and as we head towards the end of an exciting Premier League season, make sure you like and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for more content like this.